And we are live, a few minutes too late, as usual. That's now my motto. Better late than never. Tonight is a warning. The UK is a warning for the rest of the world. I assume, considering it's the same channel we covered last week, we will have something very similar happening in the UK. Because you know what? The UK has weak leadership. And the UK is the example to not follow, and Canada is following it. Anyway, let's get into it. I am very excited about this reaction. Thank you, the dragon. He knows where to look at. Let's get into it.
There's a
There we
common
go.
disclaimer in finance. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. You'll usually find it buried in the fine print of an investment pitch, a legal shield for fund managers when things don't go according to plan. But if this disclaimer applied to nations, the United Kingdom would be the ultimate test case. For
It's kind of funny because I feel like the exact same thing can be told with Canada. Like, if you do something wrong, uh, like it's coming from Canada for sure. Um, so it's very interesting. I already enjoyed the start of
Let
this.
me say something before we get into this. You know what's funny? We set on the precedent, and I'll share this with you because there's, speaking of weird crap going on, that's actually pointy and in political content, not Canada related. The FBI recently indicted the organization of the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you're familiar with this,
I
they
heard about it.
you heard about that's a big thing that I knew was in the pipeline for a while because the Southern Poverty Law Center became its own meme a long time ago. And that's a really big indictment. You people don't understand that. That is a huge indictment. And it's going to have ripple effects. Probably for not the reasons people think. And the funny part is they have tendrils that go out through a whole bunch of organizations. And they've been in leagues with a lot of think tanks. So, yeah. And other than that, this was the video prior to the Canadian one. And in this, he goes over a lot more of how an industrial nation becomes the nation like the UK is now. So it's very interesting.
And I see a common factor between Canada and the UK. Mark Carney and his friends, the corrupt people from the WEF. The WEF is disgusting, and if I had the powers, I would jail them all for treason and attack to democracy. I'd find a reason. Don't worry. But yeah, let's get into it. I enjoyed the first video, and now I'm excited about that one. So let's do this.
centuries, Britain didn't just punch above its weight, it defined the global weight class. As the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution,
Not just this, because you forget, prior to the American Revolution, the British Empire. Now, if we think the concept of empires, now the British, you can say, lost their empire in their sleep. Okay? They made a pot of tea. The joke is they make tea a lot and they take it to slow brew it and they take hours. America was, because people forget, the Brits were a dominant power, kind of like the US and other people are, for a very, very distinct standards. The British started losing their empire eventually. Okay. And then when this happens, we're talking they went back, and then They were one of the last. They've lost a lot of the vestiges of their exterior kingdoms. Like in the 1800s, it's very famous. They lost they didn't lose India until 1950s. Basically, they lost bits and pieces of their empire and influence.
I'd say this. I think every country that stayed away from the UK was better off. Because I really
Well,
think
the problem.
I let
You
me
say
continue.
this, yes.
I I really think the UK used to be glorious and strong, but after their decline, they turned into a joke. Like they are the example you don't want to replicate.
Uh,
I cannot take UK seriously. I just can't.
there's something about that a lot of people don't think about when they look at the UK, and this is something that was funny. Towards the end of the 90s, because here's the thing about Europe. Europe has basically an economic collapse about every 20 years, 30 years. And we bail them out a lot. It's a fucked up situation. It's not just the rest of the world because they have this weird philosophy. But the British themselves were one of the first cultures to push being PC. That's pre CRT, which is critical race theory, and DEI. You need to be politically correct. Be political. And it was
And I think
solved
this is the start of the decline of the British. That's how I
late
see it.
90s, in fact, post the Blair era, which, if you really get into it, but Blair's largely hated now, but the party of Blair became a hellhole. So that's a real fact. And this is why, like, when I look at, like, the reason why I'm familiar with a lot of this is mostly due to the fact that we are talking about nations that they made their, you could arguably say the British did this because critical race theory, it went from critical race theory to basically DEI. Basically, critical race theory was Kimberly Crenshaw. There's a person I may introduce you to at some point. But British were the first to embrace this PC culture. You have to change the words. You can't use these words.
It's ridiculous. It goes against freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Yep.
But I am not surprised coming from the UK that likes to
Yes,
judge
we're talking
people.
early 2000s. Okay. We're talking like 90s.
It's a crap show. I still don't understand how people can stand it. Like I want to
no, it
pack
got
my
worse,
bag from
Multi.
Canada. Yeah, I know. I want to pack my bags from Canada because we
I
are
just said.
taking the same path. I
Um,
just don't understand the people that were
Yeah.
born in freedom and then they take it away and people are fine. People are freaks. I don't get it. Anyway,
there's also the part of the reason why PC culture was done, and the same is for CRT, and it's the good intentions of DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is very similar to God. Every time I think of a term, there's a thing in the U.S. where it's the rule that you cannot discriminate hiring or bringing someone into a university or a job based on race or creed, etc. Affirmative action. Sorry, yes, that's the word. Affirmative action is where we've been seeing a lot of reverse affirmative action. So in the UK, when this started, you couldn't use brash language. They wanted to start policing language. A lot of liberals police language.
And it's funny, they were taught to be the progressive and the people that wanted free speech and that kind of crap, but they are the ones that
No,
polluted.
progressives are a different form of philosophy. 100 years ago, they first popped out of Republicans or conservatives at the time. The under Theodore Roosevelt in the U.S., we had to deal with progressives almost all the way up through FDR, and under that, that's how you had the rise of Marxism, communism, Stalinism, Hitler, two world wars,
And
decline in.
before we played the rest, I think it's very sad and funny at the same time. The left in France were the ones that beheaded kings and queens to destroy the system. And now they uphold and they defend the system at any cost. So the table has shifted, the table has turned. It's fascinating.
Actually,
Anyway,
the French Revolution, by the way, to correct you a little bit, the French Revolution was so America was founded a lot in old text or alternative political, like God, I can't think of the name right now, but there was a lot of these people, Machiavelli, a lot of these people. The French tried to duplicate it. Instead, they got the reign of terror, which was the reverse of it. And then a lot of their own leaders, very mimicking the left and liberals and major far leftists, where they start decapitating their own leaders. It's really the French Revolution, the lessons of it are key.
it's fascinating. Anyway, let's play more of this now.
Yes.
Revolution, the UK was once the workshop of the world, producing nearly one third of all global manufactured goods by
But it has
1870.
changed.
A century ago, it sat at the heart of the largest empire in history, ruling over 26% of the Earth's land area and nearly a quarter of its population. To any observer in the 19th or early 20th century, Britain's prosperity seemed like a permanent law of nature. Yet today in 2026, the narrative has shifted from global dominance to a productivity puzzle and a stagnation trap. The British disease is back, and this time it's been caused by a series of what we might call compounding errors. While the empire dissolved after two world wars, Britain remained an unusually successful nation for much of the late 20th century, seen as an economy that had firmly found its footing. But since the global financial crisis of 2008, that footing has slipped. While the United States has managed to pull away significantly since the
Hello, by
crash,
the way.
the UK has instead become a masterclass in self
Oh, by the way, The Economist is an economic magazine, but it's largely was one of the first publications to fall to progressive think tanks. It's
That's
very,
interesting.
you didn't know this. It's one of the leading, like, things where you'll see a lot of liberals pull from The Economist, but they also were very more based in the 90s where they were like actual journalists and business people, like Bloomberg was. Bloomberg then switched at one point too.
Interesting.
Now you know.
Uh, but I see that title and I'm like, the American economy has left other rich countries in the dust. And the first country I'm thinking about is the UK. Because, again, the UK used to be an empire. But I don't know what they did. And they are no longer that empire.
Hmm. So okay, brief history of the British Empire. The downfall was World War One, which is a very similar like period what we're having now. The decline of empires. The late 1800s was the Gilded Age, as it got known. It's universally known that's where you had, if you ever heard 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Jules Verne, The latter part of the Industrial Revolution, mechanized warfare was invented in the 1800s. The latter half of the Gilded Age, or the Victorian era, sometimes as it's called, was the declining era of all global empires at the time. Russians, notably, that gave rise to the Reds and the Whites fighting, which led to the rise of Lenin. World War One was the shattering of a lot of the empires at last. Now, so the British, not only did the Ottoman Empire finally dissolve, the British started showing cracks. Everyone knew that the America was a sleepy empire. Even the Japanese realized it during World War II. The idea of the rise of America would have happened, but it happened right as the last vestiges of the Gilded Age started to decline, and they took themselves out in World War One. Now, that's weird history, but America started showing industrial dominance, power dominance. Europeans will often say we came in towards the tail end of World War One after everyone was dead or dying. But at the same time, both wars, we both played isolationist and allies to the empires until we rose. But by that time, at least by World War II, they already see, it's industrial might. Because usually what happens with Americans or America in general, it was the precedent that everyone never understood the rise of America.
I
The
think
thing
one of
is,
the several reason is your economy. You guys were always a free market.
well, we had robber barons. You forget, the era of the robber barons was the late 1800s. Ford was eventually, just to give you an idea, have you ever heard of a bank called JP Morgan Chase or
Nope.
Chase Bank? JP Morgan and a bunch of other baron people, Carnegie, the robber barons could have easily paid off the national debt and still been wealthy.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, this is real. And the thing is, a lot of Europeans still think because they had 500 years advancement on the US, we were inferior to them. The thing is, a lot of their people came here, better lives. We took in the and it comes from the fact that we always had an economic power because we were isolated from a lot of the feuds of Europe. It's weird, but that's kind of the history of it.
The
Because
few feuds in North America were with Indian, but even there, like the First Nation were not that strong. So
we aren't, after the Indian Wars, we only had to feud with ourselves and we could just innovate. Now, I will say, with globalism and the way when we took over the power, because we are approaching a status that the British Empire was. I think it's like we're coming up on a major milestone, basically, like 200 plus years of America's birthday. We're talking, yeah, we're starting to decline a little bit, but we're not declining as bad as the British or other people prior to us, if that makes sense.
and I think one of the reasons is you guys helped so much with NATO, and you had military bases everywhere, and it's expensive. War
And
is
no, and
expensive.
NATO is about to collapse too. You people
Yeah,
don't.
for very valid reason. Like, as an outsider that's not in America, I feel so sad about you guys because I feel like you helped everyone, but nobody wants to help you because they don't like your
No.
president, and that's terrible. Like, it's no longer helping your country, so you will opt out of it. It's as simple as
See,
that.
here's where we're at this point. We always upheld NATO. NATO was originally done as the Allied powers to fight the Soviet expansion. And this is what they don't teach about the history of NATO. NATO, all you had to do was spend 5% of your budget on, all you had to do, 5% of your budget on military defense. They never would do that. Trump is one of the first presidents to hold people. Bush had to do it prior. Because the invasion of Georgia a long time ago by the Russians in the modern era, we actually, this was so long ago, Putin was going to try to do his expansionist stuff a long time ago, where he had more of still a military dominance to a degree. Yes, the fleets were aging, okay? Don't get me wrong. Saying the Russian fleets don't sit and rot is a myth. But we ourselves kept NATO alive. We helped keep the UN alive a lot longer. Even as through the 90s, Kofi Annan and a bunch of other bastards at the UN took advantage of that and said we were evil.
Hopefully, I cross my finger. I really hope NATO and the UN all collapse. I despise
Would you know
these
what led
organizations.
to World War
I
II? Do you know what kind of the
let,
period that
let
led?
me finish.
Yes.
I strongly believe it started off as a great idea, but it turned into shit because there's no true oversight with that. I think that's what happened.
No, you're talking about an organization that the UN would. Okay, so I didn't know this 100% off. So when Taiwan broke away from China after the Chinese Revolution with Mao, we didn't recognize China. Guess what we called the UN called China?
What?
Taiwan. Now, there's a history to that, and the Chinese were really bitter about that. And believe it or not, it's a kind of a weird cautionary tale. And then the Chinese, to get into the UN, had to fight for recognition and almost say Taiwan was always a lie. There's a lot of history people don't know. And the fun fact is, we've tried to maintain an order with roughly, I would say, the UN. And it's very much an organization that I don't think would exist because its prior people was the League of Nations. The League of Nations failed.
I think my biggest issue with it is the fact that we don't elect us, the people. We don't elect the people there, and they are granted so much power. I hate it.
And here's the other fact, I'll say this before we continue. The funny fact about the UN about to collapse. They
Make
made a
it happen.
commission. They made a commission on the Human Rights Council. Guess who they put there long ago, or within when they were still committing human rights violations?
China.
China, Iran, and a
Now
lot
they
of
defend these two.
it's like, and then like Saudi Arabia even, and we're talking nations that are supposed to be on the Human Rights Council, they
But
have
they
human
didn't do
rights
anything about it.
violations.
Because again, we don't elect these people, so these people they can say anything, and there's no true weight to it because they can do whatever.
Yeah.
Again, that's why you need to elect your folks, because if you have a functioning democracy, you know what happens? You kick out the people that don't work well. And this is why the UN, this is why NATO are collapsing, because we didn't elect these folks and they did whatever they wanted, and they kind of tarnished the reputation and the use of these bodies. So, anyway, let's play more
Yeah.
of that video now.
Sorry, Peter.
Inflicted stagnation. The data tells a stark story of divergence. Between 2008 and 2023, the US economy grew by a staggering 87%, while the EU managed just 13.5%.
Yeah.
The United Kingdom saw a similarly sluggish 15.4% rise. During this same period, Japan has struggled with a shrinking workforce, and even China, once the world's most reliable growth engine, has seen its momentum cool as it grapples with a massive real estate crisis and an aging population.
Yeah.
I think one of the many reasons why that happened for the UK, at least, because I think I know a bit better about them than the others. I heard they have so much taxation. They tax freaking windows based on what I heard. They tax animals and they tax anything they can tax. And the more money you take from your people, the less prosperous your country becomes. And this is why Canada is collapsing.
So here's a fun fact about Japan. Japan basically is one of the most indebted nations that just writes off its debts. Like they have a whole, they're about to have to write off a generational debt again. There's a reason they are powerful, but they're also heavily indebted up to their ass. Like it's close to, I'm not saying atrocious, because when you look at it, that they don't use the normal debt to GDP scale. China, at one point, actually, was a very much the rising dragon, so to speak. But they cooled because they had. Do you remember how I've said they invested in the ghost cities and a lot of real estate? That shit just rots. They built high rise mini McMansions. Most of their population can't afford it. It's kind of a meme of they build a lot of these electric cars and then they have to send them out.
But the other thing with China that people tend to forget, they use forced labor. Like the people that don't align with the government, they are forced into work camps.
I'm sorry, we call those re education camps. I thought you didn't know that.
Yeah, well, even there, like some people try to escape and they get shot.
Oh, it gets more interesting too with China. If you look up a company like Foxconn, they basically, all these people live inside or vicinity of this giant factory. They raise their families there. Oh, there's entire stories about that part of the world.
So
Even
again, to reiterate a few things, I gotta say, I think one of the biggest issues with the UK is the taxation, and one of the reason of the USA growth is the free market approach. And I I might be wrong, but I don't think you guys tax as much as the UK's or Canada. Like maybe your blue states do, because I know they are pretty progressive and they like people's money, but I think most of your red state they don't tax people until they basically choke underneath it, and that's a big factor, because if your people have money, they will spend it, and that will really make your economy moving. And if you tax them too much, nothing will move, because like they will choke. As
the
simple
thing
as that.
about
So Dragon, I think you glitched out because we don't hear you.
So the thing about red states is like Texas. We still tax, but we tax differently. We have there's less of the federal. You still have the federal taxes, but taxes are different. Like income taxes, depending on state to state, is different. But we allow people to keep more money. The problem with a lot of the older or the liberal states, the reason it's regulation, it's also that they feel they need to tax the rich. Like Mamdani's about to say he wants to tax the rich.
But then the
But
rich they get the F out because they don't want to
they
be
move.
taxed.
One of the biggest growths, the reason why South Carolina, North Carolina, and Florida started to grow in the amount of liberals being there was because the rich people in New York City moved out.
That's fascinating. Anyway,
The
let's
same with the UK, by the way. A lot of the rich people leave.
and that's why they are in dire position right now. That's why they choke. They choke in their BS. Let's play more of that now.
Unfortunately, many of the UK's struggles feel self inflicted. Over the last decade, we've seen a steady drumbeat of prime ministerial churn, policy U turns, and car production that's fallen to its lowest level since 1956. Britain is currently the only G7 nation where the quantity of goods exports is lower today than it was in 2016. The big problems are well known: stagnant growth, feeble productivity, some of the highest industrial energy prices in the world, and the lingering toxin of Brexit. These problems are not just a matter of misfortune, they're the result of compounding errors, from an uncertain business environment to a tax system that punishes ambition. Let's dig into the data to see if the UK really is the sick man of the West, or if a bit of statistical pessimism is hiding a much healthier reality. First up, we need to talk about why the productivity puzzle everyone keeps mentioning isn't really a puzzle at all. If you spend enough time reading financial news, you'll run into the productivity puzzle. It's a term economists use to describe the stark slowdown.
This is often the reason why you realize I call the AI bubble. Like every time, like there was a black guy, the Diary of a CEO.
Yeah,
He always refers to people think that AI is its own bubble. Now, the AI bubble is like the dot com bubble of like the late 90s, early 2000s with the tech sphere, basically. People forgot about this. I mean, I was alive enough to see it. Like, the idea is possible technology, but it is also the fact that it's more or less, let's say, people think productivity. Okay, let's say you're doing a manufacturing line of cars. You're using robots on an assembly line.
there's less money in the economy because of that.
So you have the people who would be hand, but here's what's funny: a lot of high end cars are still hand built. I want you to remember that.
I'm not surprised.
But
You need people for the economy.
so all people do when they work in these factories traditionally is they're making sure that the machines, they'll see if there's an impurity or an issue in the car, they'll stop the line and pull the car off the line. But to keep up production of the cars and other items, they still use people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But largely, manufacturing is done with automation is replacing a way to get higher productivity. Now, certain people aside don't realize that. Like Arch has talked about this for years. His main family fortune comes from running factories in Norway where he has to tell the robots, with people overseeing the robots, so they don't make errors.
That's funny. It's like a bureaucracy to have another bureaucracy. That's
But does that
exactly
make
how it
sense in
feels.
manufacturing? What it is, like largely what AI was? AI was largely a thing, not for what people think. It was done largely to make automation at manufacturing plants easier. Like you can make parts faster through machines and automation, so to speak. But taken to an extreme, Europe thinks less people. Now, there is a belief amongst people who are in the business. They think automation doesn't affect a bottom line or a skill gap. Like I have a friend who's an engineer. He works in doing fine parts for airplanes and aeronautical stuff. These things have to be precise. It's government contracted and it needs to be down to the right measurement. It's CMC machining. If you know what that is, multi CMC.
I don't know what's that.
It's basically the manufacturing, like CMC machines. That's the stuff used for heavy machining and to make gears, parts. In his plant specifically, he makes manufacturing for airplanes, rockets, missiles, whatever else. And every part is stamped by the person it works on. You can't automate that. You have
That
to
sounds fun.
you have to still put that into a computer. And now, but because they do use computers, they have to use engineers that can understand the computer language.
Interesting.
Because they make high-tech stuff, like to make RAM, microchips, like Texas Instruments, graphics cards, it's a bunch of people doing the soldering themselves. Yeah, the
So
more
I
you,
guess now we can play more of that video.
yeah, the more you know.
In the amount of value the average British worker produces for every hour they work. Before the global financial crisis, the UK's productivity was on a solid trajectory, but since then it's hit a wall. Today, the average British worker is about 20% less productive than their counterpart in the United States.
I wouldn't be surprised if one of the factors is taxation. Because you're like,
No, net
no?
zero.
Oh, net
Net
zero. Oh, okay. Net zero.
net
Oh, okay.
zero
I
is like
see.
one of
I see.
the
Thank you, Marxist Carney. Your
okay.
destruction has no
Here's the
parallels.
thing about. Do you know what existed before the Paris Climate Accords?
I don't know.
There was a Kyoto Accords.
Wow.
NAFTA, like when you talk about the origins of NAFTA, right?
Yeah.
The origins of that, Luce for the Doberman might know. Like the idea, he's seen this, and we've all seen this for years. The Paris Climate Accords were kind of a joke. And
Before I forget, I really feel like net zero is like a scam introduced by rivals to one of these gullible countries, and they were like, you know what? You will get rich by doing that. People will be like, oh, you're so morally superior. And turns out it's like self sabotage. If you adopt that, you're like, I will crash and burn my country, but I don't care because I will be morally superior than the others. And it's kind of funny.
no,
It's
I was
like
gonna
it's like self-inflicted injuries, and it's like your enemy encourage you to use that, so you cannot be prosperous because of that. That's
So
exactly how it feels.
there's a funny fact about the UK. It kind of touches on it later on, I think. Give people a preview because this is about like Australia. Australia is mostly a post-apocalyptic wasteland reality. It looks like it looks like Mad Max because the reason why the soil is red or different colors in different areas is largely because of iron and minerals. They the UK has some of the most amounts of coal and easiest way to make steel at one point. Same with Australia. Australia was one of the leading actual steel producers. Okay? And then net zero and other policies come in. And guess what?
It wreaks havoc.
They go, you cannot basically you got to monitor your carbon emissions.
The green scam is like it's laughable because the people that promote it,
it killed the Europe and UK first.
yeah, and now it's destroying Canada. But like the net zero scam, it's funny because a lot of the people that promote that, it's because they have assets in it and they want to grow their assets and get rich. And the worst in this, they pretend to be morally superior, but then they fly jets and they pollute a lot more than like the average person. And
The
then they say
interesting
they are
part where
morally
net
better.
zero too falls apart, multi, and to people who see this, is China and India
They
both
don't give a crap.
they have both done the akin to the Industrial Revolution. All the damage we did environmentally to the Industrial Revolution in a shorter time than we as an entire Western society, polluting and contaminating their countryside so badly, it's a toxic wasteland sometimes.
And you know what's funny? They are rising. They are rising. And you know why they are rising? They don't play into that net zero that dream scam. And it's kind of funny to think human really destroy the planet while the planet will outlast us. The planet was there before us. It will be there after us. Therefore, it's kind of stupid to pretend and think we are so important that our action will impact the planet. I'm sorry, folks, but if we don't, in purpose, like do something to truly harm the planet, I don't think the actions like the industrial stuff and our pollution is enough to really rattle the planet. I don't think that's happening. I think the planet has cycle. I think uh, even when we will be all gone because we are a stupid race, um, I think the
Planet will.
planet will experience climate change, even
Oh
if
no,
there's no human.
I can give you an interesting scenario that might happen this century, and it would affect Canada too. U.S. has one of the last active supervolcanoes. That's under Yellowstone. And I want you to understand if that goes off, it would immediately destroy our breadbasket states in the middle with volcanic ash, amongst cause global destruction, maybe drops in temperature more than we could have ever done.
So that goes back to what I said. The planet will outlive us.
Yeah.
So why fearmonger the people? It's ridiculous. It's hilarious. It's stupid. People are gullible. Anyway, let's play more of that.
The economist Tej Parikh argues that there's no puzzle here at all. He says that we know exactly what the problem is. About a third of Britain's productivity slowdown is caused by a simple lack of capital per worker. In plain English, we haven't been buying enough of the tools, machines, and software needed to make workers efficient. British workers have to make do with a third less capital than their counterparts in higher productivity peer countries. Britain has spent decades underinvesting in everything from research and development to basic infrastructure. Peric
But yet they will invest so much in the green scam because they know some of their politicians, some of their bankers, they are invested in it. I think the lack of efficiency is really like people become lazy when you throw them money. They don't want to work anymore, and I feel like even if there's a lot of taxation, I think the UK might be wrong, but I think they have a really big safety net. I think this is where it's coming from. When you speak about Canada safety net, I think it's come down from the UK. It came down from the UK, I think. I might be wrong on that. Again, I don't live in the UK, but I I'm wondering, like, again, they have so much taxation. They must have a great safety net, aren't they? So because they have that big safety net, of course their efficiency will be lower because they're like, what's the point of working a lot if you will just tax me more? Um, tax too much your people, they won't be able to breed. So compare that to China. Compare that to, maybe China is a bad example, but I'd say compare that to the USA. I think it's the best example. The USA, again, most of the states have less taxation, so that's why people are more prosperous. Um, again, the efficiency, it's because of policies, laws, bill, and the kind of BS you try to ram through people.
pointed out in a recent FT article that every French city with a population greater than 150,000 people has a mass transit system in place. In Britain, there are 30 towns and cities that large that simply go without. When people can't get back and forth to work because the buses don't run, the effective size of our most productive city shrinks. If you want to know where the remaining growth has gone, you have to look at things like the effects of Brexit on the business environment and at red tape. Britain has created a planning system so complex that reopening a tiny 3.3-mile train line near Bristol required 79,187 pages of planning documents.
Who wants to do that? It seems like a freaking nightmare. You want to build something? No, you need to read through thousand and thousand of page. Great. Who wants to do it now? Oh, and you will be taxed? UK is a joke, folks. I thought Canada was bad. The more I hear about the UK, the more I feel like the UK are worst. The UK is a laughing stock. I'm glad I'm not there. I don't know why people gravitate toward living there. I see it from the outside, and I feel like it's a crap hole. Um, and it's exactly where Canada is heading toward. They want to replicate freaking UK. Everything that's wrong with the UK, Canada wants it. So let's play more of that now.
Generated over a 16-year period. All of this was done without any tracks being laid. Apparently, if you printed those documents out, the paperwork would stretch for 14.6 miles, which is nearly 5 times longer.
And look at the pages. If you want to print it, it's almost 80,000 pages. And these are the green zealot that speak to you about net zeros and the environment, and but they will cut down trees to have like these 80,000 pages of planning document. It's hilarious. Now some people will say, "Oh, but now it's online." Even if it's online, it's just crazy. Again, I look at that from an outsider, and I think it looks like a nightmare to deal with the UK and their bureaucracy and their government and their red tape and the regulation. It's crazy. Uh, did they lose their mind somewhere? I'm wondering. Of course, having so much obstacle and roadblocks, of course that will impact your efficiency, because it's not a free market. If you need to go through so many steps to get something done, it's like centralized power. Uh, the British and their friends bureaucrats, they control everything. No wonder their economy is crashing and burning right now. Um, the UK is a joke.
than the actual planned railway. We also need to look at the tax complexity, which created a world in which a doctor has to work a 61-hour week just to earn an extra pound. And we'll look at the Bermuda Triangle of talent that is sucking the ambition out of the UK's smartest graduates. But first, let me tell you about this week's video sponsor,
Oh
Taylor
my, no,
Store,
no, no, no,
who
no,
I've
no,
been
no,
getting
no,
all
no,
of
no, no,
my
no. You didn't cut out the commercial, my friend. 6.5, so I guess I will go to 7.5.
made to measure. You won't be waiting around for them. Unlike traditional retail, nothing is produced in advance. Clothes are only made after an order is placed, which means
It's still the commercial.
cliff edges built into the tax system. We often hear politicians talk about the importance of a nation's work ethic, but the UK has structured a tax system that actively discourages people from doing additional work. UK tax expert Dan Needle gives the example on his website of a consultant anesthesiologist who earns just under £100,000 a year, a typical salary for a junior consultant. Because this doctor has young children, he receives 15 hours of free childcare allowance from the government. Without the subsidy, this would cost him around £20,000 a year.
It's way too much. Again, you brought taxation. That goes back to what I already said. The more tax you put on people, the less prosperity they can meet, the less prosperity they can have. And you'll have talents that will flee your country because they don't want to choke under your taxes. The tax burden is a big factor, but government like the UK, they don't care. As long as you pay your due, pay your tax. Who cares about prosperity, right? Um, that's the mentality of the UKs. They like big government and they like taxation, I guess. Let's play more of that.
If he agrees to work extra hours to help clear a hospital backlog and his income goes above that £100,000 mark, his marginal tax rate explodes to 62%. On top of that, his
Why would you
eligibility
do
for
that?
free child
Like it's like accepting to work for peanuts. Like you see these numbers, you're like, why should I bother working more than I should? That's the kind of mentality you create, and you cannot prosper with that. So I think there's a system issue there with the UK. Uh, it's hilarious. Uh, People they don't want to overwork. We see what happens in some region like Japan and China where people were jumping off building because they worked too hard. Uh, yeah, we see the impact. So let's play more of that now.
care vanishes. The math is so brutal that he would have to effectively work an extra 21 hours a week just to earn an additional pound of take home pay.
That's insulting. I'm glad I'm not there. Who wants that?
Unsurprisingly, many doctors and skilled professionals just choose to stay home. This chart from the FT shows how there's currently around 400,000
At least they won't tax us or them if they stay home. Well, actually, I'm sure the UK will find a way to tax you even if you stay home. Because that's the UK mentality. Drain every dollar you can from people, every pound you can drain from them.
100,000 people in the UK bunching their earnings just below the £50,000 and £100,000 thresholds, specifically to avoid these tax traps, where higher income would translate to lower take home pay. Dan Needle's website, Tax Policy Associates, gives a great breakdown of the tax mistakes that help to lower British productivity. While the tax system is pushing people out of the workforce at the top, our post Brexit migration policy has been reshuffling the deck at the bottom. Since the Brexit referendum, the mix of workers arriving in the UK has undergone a massive shift. We've replaced a flexible pool of EU migrants who could flow back and forth at will between the UK and their home countries in response to economic demand with a much more rigid system of less flexible workers. After the government dropped certain visa requirements in the wake of Brexit, the country experienced its largest and fastest expansion in low skilled migration in history.
Because the thing is, um, if you flood your country, people won't really necessarily care about politics anymore because they are newcomer, they don't understand the system, and some that do understand the system, they are told you should vote for this or that, and they won't question it because usually they come from places that don't vote. So again, it's a power play. Immigration policies are so bad, and it breaks your social cohesion as well. And I think that's what the WEF wants. The WEF doesn't want a united country to fight off. So the way to do it, well, flood your country with immigrants from all over the globe, and you will have a bunch of tribes, and they will fight each other. Um, that's what's going on. Um,
Oh,
that's happening in Canada, and that will happen in the UK.
so here's the thing about a lot what happened, because I knew he touches on this, but I can explain this more. Part of the UK stagnation comes from its it comes from its social structure changes. This was for the last 20 plus years. It's not that the change in migration, right? Like Brexit largely happened due to the fact that it was also Angela Merkel and a bunch of the Germans and EU saying you need to take all these Muslims and all these other peoples in. But it was already a common problem in Europe. They would get workers from North Africa or Morocco who would be seasonal workers, go up to the UK, do basic trolley jobs, like warehouse jobs, stuff like that. And that's when it got weird, right? It gets strange after that point. And the immigration, like Brexit, and this is what's been going on with them right now with Nigel Farage. Like their whole political leadership has been entirely fucked. Like it's hard to describe in reality, but it's been this way for a long time. And it's just that the when they took in some Albanians, as an example, they started murdering goats and stealing livestock in the countryside. They were too polite to say, "Oh, you can't." They were a high trust society. Then that degraded. It's really one of those cautionary tales because Brexit is also, it's not like they've never firmly imported North Africans to do jobs. Never. It's like Canada. It's like, it's seasonal labor. If that makes sense, Multi. They have always used Europe has always used North African labor. They just have the opening happen. And then people wanted open borders, and rest is history. You can continue. Any idea? You get what I'm saying, Multi? Okay.
So I'm back.
Yeah. You
I
didn't
I
get what I was
hopefully I
saying.
didn't miss too much. I guess
Okay,
now we can play.
I was saying, by the way, that they had always had the economy on relying on North Africans or foreign. Europe has always used North Africa for low end labor. Then they started allowing in a lot of IT workers under their own H-1B visas, stuff like that.
I feel like the HEV1 something
H-1B,
they are
whatever they
like
call it.
the modern slavery thing.
Many of these new arrivals are on visas tied to specific, often lower paid sectors like social care. This has created a labour market that's far less responsive to the economy's needs. The UK has chronic shortages in some sectors while being swamped with labour in others. This combination of a rigid workforce and a punitive tax code is hitting the next generation the hardest. There used to be the idea that a degree
Let me say the other part is what they're talking about with an aging population. You have a bunch of people who go into the medical field, and it that's for the aging population, okay, not the younger. But when you do social engineering or social policies, it will sometimes affect down society. You probably have seen that in Canada within the last 10 years. It's not that immigration is bad. The African people coming in, if you've ever seen a black British person, they're not like the African Americans or blacks that come in America. They're more dignified, they're not ghettofied, they're civilized. Low end factory jobs and other things have always been used by the British in manual labor, mining, steel work, and industrial sector. Well, the more you know.
The better.
from a British university was a golden ticket to higher earnings, but now the graduate premium in the UK has collapsed. In 1999, graduates earned 80% more than non graduates did. Today, that gap has shrunk to just 45%. This has happened right as the cost of education has rocketed. John Byrne Murdoch wrote a great piece on this last month. He points out that while there are more graduates today than in the 1990s, the problem of the declining wage premium isn't driven by there being too many graduates. As in the United States, where the percentage of university graduates is about the same as it is in the UK, the graduate earnings premium actually rose to 92% over the same period. And to make it worse, according to OECD data, British graduates are more skilled in terms of literacy, numeracy, and adaptive problem solving than their higher earning American counterparts. The problem is that the UK economy just isn't producing enough professional, highly paid roles suitable for a university graduate.
And that's because of the taxation. Because apparently it costs a lot to study, and then even when you get a job, they basically steal your money and they redistribute, and they give this and that, and they say, oh, it's for you. No, it's for the government to grow. That's what's going on.
John Byrne Murdoch shows that since the 1990s, the share of managerial and professional jobs in the United States economy rose from 28 to 39%. In Germany, they rose from 19 to 30%, and in the Netherlands, from 34 to 45% since 2005. The UK, on the other hand, has seen just a 6 percentage point rise from 27 to 33% since 1991. In the same way that Greek and Italian graduates struggled in the 1990s and 2000s, British graduates are struggling today. The declining graduate earnings premium is more of a comment on the country's stagnant economy than its higher education system. The steady increase in minimum wage in the UK has squeezed the earnings premium from the lower end too. If you look at these two charts, you can see that British graduates earn way less than graduates do in other comparable countries. and that British workers with less than a high school education earn way more than similar workers in other comparable countries. By narrowing
And I think that's deeply flawed. That shouldn't
Um,
be like that.
okay, let me say this because there's a part where I've noticed this in Europe. It's a weird dichotomy. It hit the US eventually. So, like, when you go to commercial office jobs, guess what gets neglected? Machining, plumbers, electricians. Some people who couldn't go to college, right, become, you still have a need for welders, machiners, things like that, right?
Yeah,
In Canada, have you noticed that's possibly dried up because younger people don't want to go work in mines or be machinists?
yeah.
It's people think there was a generation go to school. That's a technical career. Um, I think like a lot of the industry, it's like Michael Rowe who does dirty jobs, right? He was like, and I remember hearing from a friend in Portugal. This was about 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago. They had a hard time finding qualified plumbers.
Funny.
People didn't want to do it, or there's always the people. Like America still has most of the middle class is all plumbers, electricians, welders. You still need them for an industrial sector. You still need them for basic jobs in building. Like, it's kind of this weird dichotomy when economies start to collapse in the modern era. People forget you still need these basic jobs, welding, or journeyman tasks to do things. You can't just run stuff on a basic bureaucracy.
You need to generate something. And bureaucracies, they don't generate.
Because office jobs are good for certain people, but for manufacturing, you need people who are good with their hands. You need people who are builders. A person who works in an who's built for an office job is not built for construction. No offense.
That's true. I'd say people in construction are needed, but not enough people want that.
Oh, you're seeing this in America. People are going to trade schools now to become plumbers and electricians. It's weird, but we'll see if it improves in another generation. But yeah, it's kind of odd when you think about it.
Yeah.
the gap between the floor and the ceiling, we've created an economy where the financial incentive to spend 3 years studying for a degree is slowly evaporating. While many suggest that the simple solution is to tax the rich, the data shows that the UK already leans on high earners more than most. Middle to high income households contribute an unusual
By the way, same with the US. We already have the issue the top 1 to 5% already pay a shit ton in taxes and investment taxes. So the idea socialists and a lot of liberals are leaning towards with progressive policy, eat the rich. It's not going to work in the long term. Those people flee.
They'll go elsewhere where their money is
Oh
worth
yeah, like
more.
the people in New York is an example. People who were living in New York City, Upper
If they
East
have the
Side,
money to pack
they
their bag and
fled to
leave,
South Carolina,
yeah.
Texas, other cheaper states to live in. So
I'm
you
not
lost
surprised.
your
And
tax
you
base.
and I will also add this. Think about that. If you lose someone that makes, I don't know, 1 million a year, it will take like bunch of people just to fill the vacuum left by whoever left with 1 million. So it's really a bad plan. It's It's just terrible planning. When you hear a progressist saying, "Oh, tax the rich," do you really think the rich will say, "Heck no, the rich is rich. Why should he bother giving you his hard work?" Um, I do think we should tax a bit more as the person gets money, but you should tax in a way they don't feel it. Because if they feel it, they will pack their bag and leave. And then it's worse because then it leaves a big hole that you need to fill with a bunch of lower wage people. And even if you scale down, I was speaking about a million, let's say 500,000 a year.
Mhm.
Uh, how many people you will need? Like you'll need like 10% at 50K a year just to fill that vacuum. People don't think about the consequence of taxing the rich. Um,
I think a lot of and here's what's funny. When you talk about why union jobs dried up, so to pay a pension fund, you need people doing those manufacturing jobs as well as being part of a union. It takes about, so let's say a firefighter retiring. It takes about 5 or 6 firemen working, something like that, if not more, to pay the pension of the retiree. People are also living longer. I used to say that, but now you got a lot of people dropping like flies. But
COVID vaccine, folks, they're safe.
no, actually, have you noticed how many younger people are just dying of cancer
Yeah, the
or
food.
drug use? Well, take the drug use aside. They're having strokes, heart attacks, they're not taking care of themselves. You're seeing more catastrophic. But no,
Natural selection, folks.
younger people are not taking care of themselves as the prior generation. So their strokes, heart attacks, and everything else is just, it's eating.
large share of the UK's total tax take, while the average British worker pays relatively little by international standards. The tax burden in the UK rises more steeply with income than almost anywhere else. Specifically, the cliff edges mentioned earlier can lead to marginal tax rates exceeding 60% for those earning between £100,000 and £125,000 as the personal allowance is withdrawn. When
That seems like a lot. Um, Interesting.
you combine those cliff edges with the withdrawal of benefits, the state is effectively testing the limits of how much it can squeeze its highest contributors before they simply leave. We're already seeing
That goes back to what we said. If you tax too much to people, the people won't stand for it and they will pack their bag and leave.
the results. Office for National Statistics data shows net emigration of British people has averaged about 100,000 annually since 2021. Other
That's
nations are
crazy.
now proactively competing to attract Britain's highest skilled and wealthiest individuals.
Good
If
luck
there's
with
one
that.
thing I can't stand, it's emigrants. Rat emigrants emigrating, going over there, having sex with their women, taking their money and skills, emigrants.
This reached a somewhat comical peak in the news this week. As the war in the Middle East intensified, the government began coordinating evacuations for British citizens living in Dubai and the UAE, many of whom had moved there specifically to escape the UK's tax regime. Reports
Wow. That's sad. Okay.
emerged that many of these expats were extremely hesitant to sign the evacuation paperwork for fear of being taxed in the UK. It's a revealing look at the current state of affairs.
This is what's going on. They'd rather die in a conflict than giving their money to the UK. Oh, when you really frame it that way, it's hilarious and sad. I can't believe it. They'd rather die than give their hard earned money to the UK. Fascinating. And you know what? If I had the money, I think I'd be doing the same. It's it's fascinating. Humans are so simple and complex at the same time. It's hilarious. I like it. This video is very interesting. I get to learn a lot about the UKs and how stupid they are.
When a worker views an Iranian missile and an HMRC self assessment form as roughly equivalent threats to their well being. While the tax system discourages doctors from picking up extra shifts, a more structural rot is taking hold at the other end of the age spectrum. A significant cohort of young Britons now finds the world of work entirely out of reach. In March 2026, official data shows that nearly 1 million young people in the UK are currently what the government describes as NEETs, which stands for neither in education, employment, nor training. Youth unemployment in the UK has climbed to 16.1%, surpassing the EU average for the first time since the turn of the millennium.
I'm
The
not
headline
surprised.
unemployment figure tells only half of the story. Most of these young people, about 57%, are classed as economically inactive, meaning that they've stopped looking for work altogether. Most alarming of all is the fact that 60% of current NEETs have never had a job at any point in their lives, the highest figure since records began. We're witnessing the lost million, a generation of young people who seems to be falling through the cracks of the social and economic map before they've managed to set foot on it. It's hard to know how employable this group will ever be, even if the British economy picks up again. Economists often talk about the scarring effect of youth unemployment, where those who spend their early 20s outside the workforce often face permanently lower lifetime earnings and a much higher risk of welfare dependency as they age. By failing to integrate this million strong cohort, the UK is essentially mothballing its own future potential.
And you will have a aging population that you won't be able to sustain. And now I got a glitch because my computer crashed. So if you're there, Dragon, take over a little bit as I leave the studio and come back. Dragon, are you still here?
Sure, I will. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I will be right back. So take over, Occupy the People. I will be right back.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm having to do three things at once. But yes, the idea, the share of UK adults reporting disability. Now, this is something in the UK where you're talking about the social tolerances and diagnoses. Like the inability to actually work, that uh here's the thing about this. This is the social side where a lot of people are autistic claims people would get, like UK always had a tolerance of it. Now, here's an interesting part. US, I would say we didn't have anything, but they had more social spending side. People are unable to work, they report claims, they do other things. Now, the irony is, uh,
And
so
I'm back.
here's the thing, they have a huge social safety net for the disability, but it also takes people out of the workforce where they have to import labor to make up for it.
Major driver of this inactivity.
In
Oh, sorry
so
about
say,
that.
in the recent years, like with the Somali fraud scandal in Michigan, it's a lot of people doing and saying they're, see, like we had an explosion in cases in Michigan and other places like recently because last couple of years, months, they claimed, a bunch of claimed that they were autistic and in the Somali community. And they're like, we, because that's free money because we have the social safety net in the US. They're starting to take advantage of that here. But the thing is, a lot of what you see with the UK is a declining society because this went from an office culture to the post 90s, early 2000s society hitting them like a truck. the post-Blair years, basically. Similar to Canada, there's a different change. But what's catching up to them is they collapsed their manufacturing sector. They went to a healthcare industry. They stopped saying incentivizing their steel mills, their mining,
You
the
know, it's
coal.
funny. We are taking the exact same paths here in Canada, and the worse than
Yes.
that, with the tariffs, my friend. This week there was a report that in 6 months, if there's no deal with the USA, our mold industry, which is one of the most important, will simply collapse. And that means hundreds of thousands of jobs that will just go poof, vanish. This is what's going on in Canada. So it's just fascinating how we took all of the wrong lesson from the UK and we did that in Canada. It's fascinating. I it's beyond me. It's beyond me, as simple as that. So let's play more of the video now.
He seems to be a youth mental health crisis, which seems to be
Just like in
particularly
Canada.
acute in the UK and is possibly driven by the slow economy. The share of 16 to 24-year-olds in the UK claiming a health problem that reduces their ability to carry out day-to-day activities has tripled, rising from 7% in 2008 to 21% today. While rates of reported mental distress amongst the youth are rising globally, few countries other than Britain have seen this translate into such a sustained rise in economic inactivity. For those
Canada,
tempted to dismiss this as a simple quest for easy welfare money, that argument is undermined by the fact that 44% of economically inactive young people in the UK are not claiming any welfare benefits whatsoever. We seem to be seeing the result of specific compounding errors. First, the high UK minimum wage, which has priced inexperienced workers out of the market. In sectors like hospitality and retail, the traditional entry points for the young, hiring has become prohibitively expensive for many small businesses. At the same time, the education to work pipeline has broken down. Worst of all, since
because
the
of net
pandemic,
zero.
chronic school absence in the UK has exploded. The number of pupils missing at least one day every 2 weeks has doubled, and 1 in every 25 pupils is now absent from school at least half of the time. This level of disengagement is extremely worrying. You can't analyse the British economy without addressing the housing market.
And because he spoke about disengagement, I feel like we need to address that. If you disengage from school, uh, you also disengage of many other sphere. Someone that disengaged from school is more likely to disengage from the workforce. It's most likely to disengage from politics. Once you tap out in one area, you may end up tapping out in many areas, and that's very bad when the young people they tap out of several aspects of their lives. But who can blame them? I don't think we can blame anyone. I I think the system is rigged against the people, and this is because of the WEF, because of the people like the people in charge of the UK's and of Canada. They are the ones that caused that issue. Um, so yeah, let's play more of that now.
For decades, the UK has essentially operated as a property market with a country attached. While the American public is famous for its engagement with the stock market, with approximately 62% of American adults owning shares, only about 26% of Britons have any exposure to the markets outside of their workplace pensions. Instead, the British have poured the vast majority of their collective wealth into real estate as an investment. Today, net property wealth accounts for about 40% of total household wealth in the UK, while financial investments make up just 14%. The country serves
Imagine if there's a housing crash. That's 40% of your economy that will take that hit. That's why you don't want your economy to be solely based on housing, especially when you got immigration out of control like the UK's. I I I really have a hard time to understand the thought process behind all of these decisions. I think we got some really bad actors. I don't understand their motive, but I don't think it's by any luck that we got so many broken things in the UK. I think it's by design and purpose by some people behind the scene. Why, I don't know. Maybe it's people that want to play with human lives. I don't know. Um, Fascinating. Let's play more of that now.
As a warning to other advanced economies of what happens when a nation overemphasizes real estate as its primary investment vehicle. The result is a stagnant, immobile economy by design. Governments are incentivized to choose policies that push house prices higher and higher, as no
Tax the houses more, tax the windows. And that creates so many issues just to make your government more fat and just to jack up the price of houses. And that's why there's the housing crisis. It's because it's center of your economy and you will tax every bit of a house you can tax so you can maximize revenue over the housing market. And that's why people cannot really purchase houses anymore. Um, I think it's very much intertwined. Um, so it's crazy to think about that. It's sad. It's very sad. Let's play more of that.
government would be re-elected if they presided over a property crash. Older generations sit on massive untaxed capital gains in appreciated property, while the young can't afford to move to productive cities because they simply can't afford the entry fee. As of early 2026, UK housing affordability remains stretched, with average home prices in England sitting near 8 times median annual earnings, nearly double the historical average of the late 20th.
So that means it's almost impossible to purchase an house. The wealth redistribution is through the housing market. The rich are richer, like the people with houses, their asset they grow. It's kind of fascinating. As long as there's no housing crash, they will get rich, filthy rich. Um, so let's play more of that now. That collective wealth, fascinating.
Century. Despite recurring government promises to build 1.5 million new homes, the reality has been a lesson in the power of NIMBYism and planning red tape. Local consultations and environmental hurdles have turned simple bricklaying into decades long legal battles. In London, the situation is particularly acute. House building has effectively collapsed, with new starts reaching their lowest level since the Second World War. When property is viewed as an investment asset that has to go up year after year in order to keep voters happy, you eventually reach a point where it's so unaffordable to the young that they're forced to move abroad, where the cost of living is more in line with their incomes. Compounding the cost.
I'm not surprised. This is the housing crisis in a nutshell. People flee countries because they cannot afford to live there. Like a lot of people that want kids, they cannot have kids because they don't have a roof. Therefore, they will move elsewhere. It's just how it happens. When you neglect your housing market, when you destroy it, this is what happens. And if it's a few years ago issue that started recently, I think we should blame it on their bankers. And who was banker? Who was banker? Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. So he basically destroyed the UK, so Europe and Britain and whatever, England. He destroyed the EU basically, and now he is doing the same with Canada, with the exact same policies. Because the WEF doesn't care about people. The WEF will destroy people, and they are actively doing it right now. So let's play more.
of living is the cost of simply keeping the lights on. As the economist Martin Wolf argues, the British government has turned the country into a global outlier on energy policy. While British
Net zero.
policymakers might believe that they're setting a green example for the rest of the world, Wolf points out that the UK only accounts for less than 1% of global CO2 emissions. So even if they cut emissions to zero, it just wouldn't move the needle. By maintaining industrial electricity prices that are among the highest in the G7, often 50% higher than in Germany and 4 times the cost in the United States, the UK is not saving the planet. Instead, it's mostly just exporting its emissions to the third world. The country shuts down domestic manufacturing only to buy finished goods back from nations with far laxer environmental standards. It's a hollow victory that looks good on a carbon spreadsheet, but erodes the industrial base and possibly has a much harsher environmental impact too. Other nations are watching this green leadership and possibly concluding that it's not worth the cost. Then there's the triple lock. Since 2011, this
So net zero, again, it's the green scam. It's for the rich that invest their money in solar panels, in windmill. These people are vile. They abuse the system. They know it's working. They fearmonger the people. They are like, we will blow up the planet, even if the planet will most likely outlive us. But hey, I'm a climate denier, right? Right? I think China should close up their coal factories if their coal mines and that kind of stuff. I think they should shut them down if they were really that concerned about environment, because it's really China and India that really pollutes the planet. It's not the UK, it's not Canada, but hey, we gotta pay the price, right? We gotta contribute our 1%.
No, the thing with the Paris Climate Accords, or the same with the Kyoto that fell apart, is it did not affect developing nations. Like China basically did the Industrial Revolution, or a section of it, within 30 to 40 years. India went from being this weird backwater nation to being a modern nation. That takes oil. Even if the West cut off consumption of oil, China and India, which have some of the largest population, is still consuming it. This was always the failure of the West to understand. It's one of the craziest things I have seen. And this has been a problem for so long. And then we're supposed to cut our carbon emissions. Yet China and Russia, I mean, not China, well, not really Russia, but China, India, and other developing nations. There were other Asian ones that did this. They can pollute the countryside, cause environmental damage, and we can't say shit? No, it's been that weird policy. The UK was the ones who, and France and Germany were leading the way. So much so, the UK, Germany almost fried its entire grid. Think about that one, folks.
And I heard about Spain having blackouts because they are freaking stupid with net zero scam. Green energies, right? You cannot rely on them, but the rich that live in mansions and that fly planes, they tell you should care about that.
policy has guaranteed that the state pension rises by the highest of inflation, average earnings, or 2.5%. For 15 years, successive leaders have ignored the looming fiscal cliff that this creates, fearing the political fallout from the country's most reliable voting bloc. Like high house prices, the triple lock functions as a massive transfer of wealth from the young to the old. Median wealth for pensioner couples now exceeds £600,000, while a single parent under 35 has a median net worth of less than £30,000. By prioritising the silver vote over economic reality, the state is taxing the working age population to the hilt to support a demographic that is, in many cases, significantly wealthier than the people paying for it. The frustration for many observers is that easy wins are consistently ignored.
And I think one of the factor of the poor health is not only what people eat, but also the work hours. Because I heard so many stories. I don't know if it's in the UK as well, but in Canada, like there are people that have 2 or 3 jobs because they cannot make it work with one, and that may play into the mental health crisis and why younger people, they don't live as long as they used to, because life has gotten so much harder because of weak men and weak time. So yeah, it's fascinating.
It's part of also men are going to live shorter than women, anyways. But it's also the fact that health issues become a problem too. Because one of the leading causes of health concerns in the UK, I think it's NHS, that they call it. Don't quote me. It's what they call their national health care. Like, they were doing at one point, if people were autistic or they expanded their social health care system, they literally would just give them whatever.
Interesting.
Now, the fun fact is, all of this is coming at the public dime. So if people wanted to transition, guess what they were doing? The government. It's kind of like in the US. They've talked about someone goes to prison, claims they're trans. Should the prison system pay for their transitioning?
Heck no.
Same with, is transitioning
But we talk with people so disconnected with reality and that they don't really care about taxes. So I guess
no, but you know what I'm talking
will,
about, right?
Yeah,
This is
I know.
actual real stuff. Like,
I know.
UK did this, and a lot of the government, like, artists talked about this in Norway. Norway, where he lives, has like the population of New York City, if not slightly more. But it's very tiny, or maybe less. But their social policies and their taxes, it's the size, it's a very kind of bigger nation, but the population is less than a US major city. And then they have the social spending. And this is what people don't realize. Social policy does not work on a large scale. Like, if you have a giant population, it's hard to balance social health care.
The more people you give a safety net to, the more expensive your safety net gets.
And
that's one of the issues with mass immigration like that.
Here's the other part. Switzerland is trying to pay migrants to leave just to get them out.
Fascinating. I like that.
Here's the part where, because there's a bunch of raping and other crap going on in Switzerland, violence against women and other things. And this is coming from migrants and other people who came there recently in the last decade. They want, and this is not like, oh, these people are progressive. The thing is, everyone wants a social safety net. And I know it's kind of a little bit fucked up, but the UK and other nations like in Europe, Germany, France, were leading the way. People forget at one point, and I can remember twice in the last 20 years, Spain. So after the train bombing, years ago in Spain. I'll have to look up what year that was. They blamed it on a bunch of like conservatives and other people, right?
Of course, it's always
So
because
they
of the
blame, and
right.
guess what happened? The people overwhelmingly voted socialist.
It's never the socialists. It's never the left. It's always the
They
right.
voted in a bunch of extremists, like socialist, borderline communists, that started running their nation into the ground. I'll have to go look that back. I remember it when it happened.
That sounds like the Europe, so I don't think you need to fact check because the Europe are socialists.
No, but here's the thing. That's like when they did a regime change. Then they eventually snapped back against that government, bringing in to some conservatives people. And then eventually the liberals kicked out that party. Now Spain is going back to being far left again.
Wow.
So
it didn't last
we're
long,
talking
right?
about social conditions, because once this sets in and it's been taking over Europe for a while, even if they're anti-Muslim, guess what? They're also anti-Jewish. They're anti-Zionist. And I'm not saying that, and they firmly get on board with a lot of anti-Semitic policies or stances, because there is no way, like, I brought this up on the last stream I did on the Islamic invasion of Europe and how they, in other parts, they take over. They cucked Europe. Migrants cucked Europe more ways than one. They let the radicals in. Like after Syria fell, basically years ago, to the civil war and ISIS and Ashir, I can't think of the guy's name. The guy who was a doctor, replaced his father. He basically, Bashir al-Assad, I believe, he basically, that Syrian civil war created an exodus, and those Muslim migrants fled to Europe. A lot of them European people were like, let's take these people in. Like I've discussed this with Sorter before. The Turkey didn't want them. What makes you think Europe should want them? Egypt didn't want them. So they fled.
Progressive. We are leftists. This is what.
Then they brought it in because they were refugees fleeing from a war. Guess what happened? They blamed the U.S. and blamed us for invading the Middle East. They took these people in, and when they arrived immediately in Germany, it was weirdos eventually. They burned their papers. They dropped them overboard into the water. They've been doing this too recently. All the migrants have these fresh papers. They can't verify where they're from. And again, if you don't believe me, I've talked with Sorter over this, and we've discussed this.
I believe you. It all
and
makes sense.
And then
crazy.
and I'm saying this for your audience. They believe if you don't take in these refugees, they're going to be. But what happened in Germany years ago, and you can go find this yourself, some would go crazy eventually on trains, yell Allahu Akbar, take a hatchet or a knife, and start stabbing people in trains in Germany. And then they just said it was some weird deranged person. At first, but everyone there knows it's the migrants or the Muslims that got allowed in. I know it sounds weird. And I know
it doesn't sound weird. It makes sense. Canada is just like that.
Has Canada been doing that too? Because it's like you have a weird spike in crime, and they don't want to blame.
Ontario, in the last 10 years, Ontario has seen a great rise in home invasion. And it's kind of fascinating because the city has turned brown because there's too many Indian.
Brown is in terms of Indians, or brown is in terms of
Indians?
Arabs.
Indian.
Okay.
Ontario is the province of the Indian. Like, it's so big. I can't remember which city, but there's a city in Ontario. that's so much taken over by the Indian that they basically created a monument of one of their gods, and it's in front of a shopping center. And when you go by that shopping center, you don't feel like you're in Canada anymore. You feel like you're in a more gray and more cold and snowy India. I'm not joking. I would need to research that, but like this is what has become part of Canada. Like the Indian took over, and there's a lot of Arab as well, but again, the Indian are the biggest migration block or immigration block, I should say. They're taking over, man. That's what's going on. We will have one day a Indian prime minister that's probably foreign born. Cannot wait for that. We will have like civil war for that. Anyway, let's play more of that video now.
In favor of political safety. The government could have implemented permanent accelerated depreciation for technology investments to jumpstart productivity. It could have made a concerted effort to attract disenchanted researchers from the United States and elsewhere, a literal brain gain. Instead, the US has sidestepped the difficult decisions like unpicking the triple lock or genuinely gutting the planning system and settled for a bunker economy, safe for those already inside, but disastrous for those on the outside looking in. When an economy stops growing, politics stops being about how do we get ahead and starts being about who's taking my slice of the pie. Britain has entered a zero-sum era where every gain for one group is perceived as a direct loss for another. This is most visible in the generational divide. Because the economic pie isn't getting any larger, the elderly protect their property values and pensions with a ferocity that effectively locks the young out of the future. As The Economist recently argued, Britain's stagnating economy has brought back a bitter form of class politics to the UK. The haves, largely older asset-rich homeowners, prioritise the protection of asset values. Meanwhile, the have-nots, the young and the working class, find themselves priced out of housing and squeezed by the highest energy costs in the G7. Historically, Britain's working class tended to vote Labour, while middle and upper class voters supported the Tories. This
I won't be surprised if now, because of the current situation over there, it has reversed. It's exactly what happened in Canada. It has reversed. So I wouldn't be surprised if what he mentioned also reversed in the UK. I wouldn't be surprised.
dynamic broke down in the 2010s, particularly after the Brexit referendum, as cultural issues rose in salience. Age and education replaced class as the key demographic dividers. According to The Economist, Reform and the Green Party have made significant gains amongst voters who don't own their homes. The college educated and female members of
Because the people in charge, the people in government, they they don't see the reality on the ground, and they are for the statu quo. The people in the opposition, the people that aren't in power, are the ones that promise change. And will they get it? I don't know, because we are far
So,
left.
so here's the weird thing about uh, the UK. It's really, really weird that they they basically decided at some point where, look, it's this generational. A lot of the people, like there were cities 5 years ago, like say four or a decade ago, they're now nothing but a bunch of either Muslim uh, or haram meat shops kind of thing, or you see countrysides that used to be like small areas where there was like it looks like a British backwater shire from like Lord of the Rings, okay?
That's
Like
rating.
it's weird. And now they're all either Indian shops, Muslim shops in some areas, entire streets taken over. And this is modern UK. Like, and I've heard it from even the most liberal people in the UK. They're like, what the fuck has happened to our little towns? Like, their little villages and hamlets. They have terms for them. They're like villages. You know what I mean? They're smaller communities.
Yeah.
And they're like, what happened? Some of them are now waking up to, a lot of them just took over an area. They're all haram delis. They're all these. And it's not Jewish. They're all Indian or they're all this. Like, you see it probably in Canada, right? It's like entire Asian districts pop up because a lot of Asian people move there. And then it's in the UK, people are beginning to wonder, and this is what's causing the recent people backing reform.
We got all of the Indian in Canada. Don't worry about the Indian.
They are basically doing, it's not the in reverse. They're realizing it's almost maybe too late. They don't realize they have to get Starmer out, but they also have to physically. It's this weird thing with the UK. They don't realize they're potentially. It's a lot of conditions that have led to their economic collapse.
And I'll also say this: you mentioned Starmer. I feel like it's more than just Starmer. I think.
No, it's an entire government.
Yeah, it's their party in charge, and I think you need to root out anyone that works for the WEF, and you all charge them with treason because this is what they are, traitors. Schwab the other day was like praising a New World Order. It's like, bruh, you're like a Bond villain right now. But like anyone linked to the WEF, they should all be sent to jail. No trial, nothing. They don't deserve a trial. They want to trample on people's rights. Let's do that to them. Let's play more of that now.
This group have moved towards eco-populism, so the Green Party, while working class and male renters in social housing have increasingly switched to nationalist populism, so reform.
Yes,
These movements don't offer viable structural solutions to the productivity problem, but they do provide a powerful vent for national anger. Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform Party, is perhaps the most visible face of this trend. While he frames himself as a champion of the squeezed middle, it's worth remembering that he was also the primary architect of Brexit, the very event that many economists point to as the single greatest self-inflicted wound to British growth in recent history. The data around the damage done by Brexit is hard to ignore. By March 2026, the Brexit dividend remains invisible. Instead, the country is left with an economy that's roughly 5 to 6% smaller than it would have been had it stayed in the EU. Economists have calculated that the business.
And I'll also add this. So in Canada, there's that brainwash machine, that psyop that basically pretends Canadian wants to be part of the EU. And it's kind of hilarious because we got so many people that wants out. Once they're in, it's a nightmare to leave. And then we just got Canada that's like, let's go attach ourselves to them. Like, there's an entire sea that separates us, but let's go with them. It's ridiculous. Again, anyone linked to the WEF belongs in a jail.
It's
in a cage.
It's not really World Economic Forum that's at fault. Because
they're entrenched so much. They are entrenched so much. They push for these policies.
It's the IMF's been over there a while.
Anyway, this is the rise of the right, and I hopefully we will get that rise in Canada.
See, okay, reform is an interesting case because many people don't like Nigel Farage.
They like the party, but not the guy.
Basically, he's kind of like the lesser of two evils because the
Wow,
party members
sounds fun.
he's not the best representative. Even though he kicked off Brexit, he got exiled from his own community as well as punished by the people. Literally, the Greens. Like, if you, I was looking at something about the policy of the Greens. They want to legalize drugs, they want to legalize equality. Like, they have this weird, like, these a lot of like, it makes your NDP look sane in
Oh,
their
really?
policy.
Our NDP
God,
saying,
it makes your
wow,
NDP look sane.
wow, I
They
like
are
it.
younger and they're like, but they're so far, which would be super liberal. It's insane.
Fascinating. The
Yeah.
UK is cooked.
It's not that
They
it's
are
cooked.
cooked.
It's not that it's cooked. I would say it's a generational issue.
Let's play more of that now.
Business uncertainty surrounding the exit and the eventual friction it introduced to trade caused a significant dip in business activity that the UK has never truly recovered from. Since the 2016 vote, UK business investment has essentially flatlined, while it had grown by nearly 30% in the 5 years prior. Furthermore, trade intensity, the total value of imports and exports as a share of GDP, is down by about 15%. It turns out that starting a fight with your most important trade partners is maybe not a winning strategy. This stagnation breeds a specific kind of pessimism. When hard work and education no longer feel like paths to a better life, the most ambitious individuals stop trying to fix the system from within. This is the ultimate compounding error. A country that makes it so difficult for its most productive citizens to thrive that they eventually decide to take their talents elsewhere. A recent YouGov survey showed that 79% of the British public think that the economy is unhealthy, and three-quarters believe that it will be even worse in a year. The British disease of the 2020s isn't a lack of ideas or a lack of skill, it's a policy induced paralysis. The solution isn't a puzzle, it's a hard choice that politicians don't want to make. It involves unpicking the tax traps, gutting the planning system, and making the difficult decision to stop prioritizing the bunker economy over
Sounds just like Canada. Have the WEF in charge, and this is what you get.
for the next generation. Britain has spent over a decade proving how easy it is to dismantle a successful economy through a
Thank you,
series of
Mark Carney. You are
compounding
in
errors.
England.
The question going forward is whether the country can finally find the courage to start putting it back together. If you found this video interesting, you should watch my
Well, well, well. This is what we all call the UK is a warning to the rest of the world. If you want to watch on your own this video that Dragon brought to us, it's in the description below. I quite
It's
enjoyed it.
Patrick Boyle is largely, if I fault him for anything, he doesn't talk about the social aspect.
It's really the economy, and it's a very nice case study.
He talks
I
about
enjoyed it.
100%. Basically, to him, he's just an economist and an advisor.
And he sounds very smart, and I think he knows his crap. He knows it.
And
I want
it's
him to be my next PM because apparently
so
bankers are our PM.
he is that person that I have often, interesting enough, him quoting The Economist is kind of like a British thing. Like, people don't realize that I'll be honest, he doesn't realize that The Economist can be it's like, if you say like Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York, used to be a conservative or normal business, because usually the business class isn't like the globalists. This is the weird part. But a lot of his stuff, he is of the European branch, so to speak. Uh, he basically, unlike Sargon and Lotus Eaters, which you got to take with a grain of salt, because to them, okay, because to someone like them, and I was just having to do research on somebody else, and I'm finding an old thing by Stelios, who works with Lotus Eaters, and he was going against Jeremy Hambly years ago. I'm looking at these people, and he was going against them for when the quartering did something against the PDF judges scandal. The funny thing about this is that's the same Stelios that's on the Lotus Eaters.
Interesting. So now I guess that we talked about the UK is a warning for the rest of the world. Now this is the outro. So I will ask you, Dragon, what do you have going on your end of the internet?
I will have next week. I have Diablo 4's not season. It's going to be basically the expansion and the other stuff. Then I am hopefully, if I can get Sorter on, or I do have a potential other thing that I might have to do, because YouTube is attacking. I have a fear. There was something I feared was going to happen this year before the midterms, and I wasn't sure. Conservatives and normal people have enjoyed a nice ride for like a year and a half. My views have been getting hit. Like, I did the thing on the Islamic takeover and something else. It got buried by the algorithm. And yeah, see, I may have to start another channel. I'm going to work with Miss Sparkles, because I need to separate it from my gaming channel so it doesn't hurt my other one. Because, as you can understand, Multi, because if YouTube wants to suddenly switch my channel to politics, because apparently the current algorithm changed, and I can't confirm this. They always do it every March. They buried some views, as well as my schedule was inconsistent. So I might have something with the Sparkles coming up, or I'm also going to have some gaming commentary next week, because I might talk about, or I drag you into it, talking about, maybe it's not as interesting to you, but it's more interest to my side, with the Southern Poverty Law Center being exposed after all these years. The Southern, so you must, I have other projects down the pipeline, and I have other games. So, yeah, YouTube's doing its bullshit. And I have a feeling, like, especially if Multi wants to cover politics, I have a feeling American politics is going to get censored by Google again.
Just because of that, I think we should cover other stuff, because
I don't know. This is just speculation.
I will be honest, Reagan. We have laws in Canada that are trash, and because of
don't
that,
cover
it's really
Canadian.
hard. It's really hard for channels to grow. So I won't shoot more myself.
I wouldn't cover Canadian politics,
even if it's not Canadian, my friend. I think because of the laws we have here, it's really hard for me to
cover. No, and that's
cover
anything. That's the thing. I will be honest. there's a big change in the YouTube algorithm, at least the recommendations.
Yeah,
They're
that's
no,
true. I've
they're,
seen it. I got more
have you
views.
seen it yet? Have you
Yeah.
seen the when you look up? Confirm this for me if you've seen this. Have you seen more when you look up stuff? More recommendations of liberal leaning versus the balance we were seeing about 2 months ago.
Yeah. And us, it's on steroid. Like, especially on social media, it's a nightmare, man. Um,
Basically, yes, YouTube
it's flooded.
recommendations. Basically, my YouTube recommendations. I was trying to figure out why they went to hell within the last 2 months. That's a change. That's a change in the algorithm. I already know it. It's not squelching the discovery versus you need to do it at a time. But I will tell you right now, I'm starting to see more videos by Vosh Hassan and a bunch of others that are massive leftists over conservatives. And there's also the thing
It's
of there was,
worse. It's worse in Canada because we have
oh
the
God, I can't even
CRTC.
imagine your recommendations.
It because of the CRTC. It's worse. Like, I I just, when I don't know the content creator, I just don't click. Because again, our regulation and our laws make it worse. So if you thought your recommendation were bad, imagine mine. Anyway, so that's the foreshadowing. So what I have going on my end of the internet? Well, Monday, Casino Royale again, because I did read the book and I did enjoy the movie a lot. I will have another discussion about these two things. Tuesday, it's WandaVision and Agatha All Along. I cannot wait to talk about that. I already covered Agatha All Along. I think that video was peak entertainment. But at that point, I didn't watch WandaVision, so now it will be with a fresh set of eyes. Wednesday, we talk about Michael, the new movie that just came out. Um, I don't know why people hated it so much. I don't think it's the best biopic there is, but it was quite enjoyable. Um, well, Thursday,
Actually, no, Michael just dropped.
yeah,
So
yeah, I just
yeah,
dropped, but
it just
Thursday, Thursday we do a reaction stream, and Dragon, I trust you with the content. You are
sure.
the content manager now.
I'm actually good with finding. See, the thing about a lot of the other parts is I cure. I don't like brain rot. So a lot of the stuff, like with the UK, it is still. But there's parts of the stuff that I stay away from because I like Sargon of Akkad and Ligarge. I like V. But Sargon has been doing some weird takes because what I'm seeing with certain cultures, and it's coming at really odds even with America's tribalism, it's like Europe is doing the mix of they like the UK, they want nationalism, but they also want to say the Israel lobby controls everything. It's like you can't have it both ways. You can't hate Muslims yet say the JQ problem exists. I'm like, and I'm looking at this like, but they also look at America and some of the West as hostile, but they also fail always to. That's why I try to bring a host of topics that are interesting,
Yeah,
because you have to, with certain people like Patrick Boyle, you have to look at the social conditions that created it.
yeah. And again, so Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Find us something short because
Sure.
Thursday we only have 2 hours. Thursday, maybe 2 hour and a half if we really push our luck. But yeah, so
I
Thursday
would.
we react to things again. 2 hour, 2 hour and a half, just like tonight. And Friday we talk about The Boys season 5, episode 3, episode 4, and episode 5 because this is all we do. With that being said, thank you, chat. Thank you, viewers. I like what the algorithm is doing to my videos because they are pushed a bit more than they used to, and it's kind of great. Anyway, if you want more content like that, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned. And by the way, in the description of this video, you will find what we reacted to, and you will find my other channel. The gaming channel is right now premiering a video about Requiem because I did like Requiem a lot. And if you want gaming review, subscribe to my gaming channel because I will have the first review out on that channel at the end of the month of May because I need to do the editing. Anyway, with this, we are out. See you whatever the day you want to tune in for reviews or gaming or reaction to things like we did tonight. Have a great one and take care.